Guardsmen, get to the trench line now. The first line of defense has collapsed. The world eaters are coming, and the land raider. Oh, Emperor, give us your blessings. By the throne. Is that an orc?
You may come with me if you want to save Yarrick.
You son of a bitch. I'm in. Guardsmen, today we march! We join an orc warband to save Commissar Yarrick! I primed this mini in Mechanicus Standard Gray Rattle Can. We're doing everything in this administratum approved tutorial, from painting leather to painting orc skin and the glow effects with the big Shoota. Step 1. We're gonna base all the leather in dryad bark. It will have the appearance of being black later, but this is when we're gonna be doing the highlights. Step 2, we're gonna use Iron Warriors to base all of the metal parts. This was mostly just the big Shoota and some areas on the drum rack that I wanted to be metal. There's also these little like buttons on the leather. You can paint that in metal as well. Step 3, we're going to use a bright gold for all of those bullet casing and bullets that are along the side of the mini. Now for the base where it has all of the bullet casings, we're just going to want to dry brush the gold on top of that. Now you're gonna want to just use a dark bronze or Balthazar gold, and we're just gonna want to add it in a couple of places on the bottom of the base of those bullet casings, just to add some difference in colors and variations. For the orc skin, we are gonna base it in Castellan green. Now it's really important that you do not put a thick coat on, or it's gonna be making highlighting really difficult. You can always thin down your paint just slightly with some water and build up on the mini until you have a nice even coat. For that bottom kind of lip area where the teeth are, we're gonna mix 2/3 Emperor's Children with 1/3 Castellan green. Once you mix that all good and up, you're just gonna tap it along that bottom kind of lippy gum area where the teeth are. For the actual teeth itself, we're gonna use Ushabti bone. You're gonna water this down just slightly so that it's easy to glaze on. We don't want it to be a pure white, so the Ushabti bone is going to work very nicely. Once you're all done doing the base colors, you're going to grab yourself some Agrax Earthshade. Make sure you mix up the Agrax Earthshade first, and you want to do the entire mini, including the base where all of those shells casings are. Now for highlights on the orc skin, we're gonna mix equal parts Agrax Earthshade with Elysian Green. You wanna make sure that you mix it all good and up, and it should be thicker than a wash, but still fairly watery. Now you don't want too much on your brush, but you don't wanna wipe it off on a paper towel. So just use the end of your plate and get some of that excess paint off your brush. And all we're gonna do is build up highlights. So it should just be a gradual highlight for those initial brush strokes, and then you're just gonna keep adding it on and on and on until you get that desired highlight that you want. I really just kind of focus on some of those protruding areas like on the neck, the jawline, and some of that head and nose area. We are now going to switch over to a very small, fine pointed brush. And we're going to use this area to hit some of those areas that are just hard to reach with the previous brush that I was using. This is also a good time to just use a pure Elysian green that's just slightly watered down to hit some of those brightest areas of highlights. Now it's really time to make this leather stand out. We are going to use Eshin Gray. You want to use a slightly larger brush for this. And you want to wipe it off first on a paper towel to make sure there's barely any paint on your brush. And all you're going to do is dry brush pretty much over the entire leather. Now areas of the leather that be kind of more worn out, we want it to be brighter. So that's gonna be areas like the elbow, the knee, and maybe that kind of top shoulder area. Now some of those areas like on the collars or sharp edges, you can just tap it in or brush over that area just a little bit more so you get a brighter highlight. We're going to use Mechanicus Standard Gray for highlights on the leather. Now this is slightly lighter than the Eshin Gray. We just want to focus on some edges, some creases in the leather, as well as some areas that we want to be even brighter, like on the knees and the elbows. I also just put some highlights like on the shoes. Also, this is just something kind of fun that I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but they have changed the Mechanicus Standard Gray over time. I don't know if you can tell, but this bottom one is the older Mechanicus Standard Gray, while this top one is the newer one, and this one's slightly darker. For highlights on the teeth, we're going back to Ushabti Bone. It's gonna help if you just water this down slightly so it goes on nice and smooth, and all we're gonna wanna do is focus on that top half up of the teeth. We want that bottom half to still be kind of dark. So if you do end up kind of over highlighting that with that Ushabti Bone, just go grab that Agrax Earthshade again and just put it on that bottom half of the teeth. We are now going to use a bright silver like Stormhost Silver. This is going to help us with those kind of light effects with that muzzle flash later on in the video. So we want to do very heavy highlights on that big Shoota, especially in that front area. I also just use the side of my brush to hit some of those barrels as well. Now for the actual drum mag itself, I like to have chips and scratches, so you're just going to use the end of your brush and you just want to tap it along that drum mag so that there's just some chips along the edges and we don't want it to be even. Now you can slightly water down that Stormhost Silver and you can add some scratches on there as well. For the muzzle flash, we are going to base it in a pure white. We are now going to use Contrast Imperial Fist, but we want to dilute it significantly. So we want to do about 1/2 Contrast Imperial Fist to 1/2 water. And this is gonna help make this very pale yellow, and that's exactly what we want. We want to paint the entire muzzle flash in this very pale yellow. Now, once you're all done painting the entire muzzle flash, you're gonna switch over to a pure Contrast Imperial Fist. Now where it has those little spiky ends on there, You want to focus about halfway on there and paint up to the very tip. Now where it's like this and it has that muzzle flash coming way out there, the very farthest one, you're gonna paint this entire thing in contrast Imperial Fist. Now if the muzzle flash was pointed towards you, so it's looking kind of like this, we want to leave some of those areas with that pale yellow, so you want to stay away from it. We're now going to use Pro Acryl's Fluorescent Orange, and if you don't have that, I would use Troll Slayer Orange. You want to get all that excess paint off first off your brush using a paper towel. You want barely any paint on your brush. And you're just going to want to dry brush the muzzle flash. Now you still want to keep that pale yellow and that contrast Imperial Fist that we just painted. So you're just going to want to brush away from the base of that flash. So you're just gonna brush towards all of those tips, gradually making it darker and more pure with that Troll Slayer Orange. Next, we're gonna use Pro Acryl's Fluorescent Red, and if you don't have that, I would use Mephiston Red. And use a paper towel to get off all of that excess paint. You want barely any paint on your brush. And all you're gonna do is you're just gonna dry brush all of those tips on the muzzle flash. You want the tips to almost be in that pure red. So you just want to gradually build up those colors towards the tips. Now to complete the muzzle flash, we're going to use Abaddon Black. Now you're going to wipe it off first with a paper towel to make sure there's barely any paint on your brush. I used a smaller brush because I want it to be in smaller sections and not everywhere. So you're just gonna want to focus on the very tips of those pointy ends. Now, if you go over too much of the area, you can always go back with the red and cover some of that area that you painted in the Abaddon Black. We're going to go back to the contrast Imperial Fist, and where we did that highlight with the metal earlier on, we're just going to paint over that with the contrast Imperial Fist, and it's already going to kind of have a highlight in it because we already previously highlighted it with a brighter silver. Now we're going to go use Troll Slayer Orange. You're going to want to water this significantly until it's like this watery like substance. You're going to get the excess paint off just using the side of a plate. And you're just going to tap it randomly. Doesn't need to be perfect, just kind of tap it randomly along that area we just did with that contrast Imperial Fist. We're going to use the fluorescent orange from Pro Acryl to put highlights on the orc. We want to use a larger brush and we want to get the excess paint off first using a paper towel. You want barely any paint on your brush. And you're going to dry brush it on the mini where the muzzle flash light would hit it. So you want to gradually just build up colors, and you want to just focus on some areas that are protruding like the hand, the knee, and the shoe. But you want to kind of get around that entire area, so if you turn the mini around, it wouldn't look weird. Now, once you're done with that, you're gonna get a fine, small brush, and with the pure fluorescent purple, not getting any excess paint off, you want to focus on some of the edges and creases in the leather. So these would be the very brightest points for the orange that you want to be on there. I did this kind of on the shoe, the hand, and a little bit on the knee. For the brightest of highlights, we're gonna use Uriel Yellow. Now you wanna put this in very small sections and on the very brightest areas. Now the areas that you previously just highlighted with that pure fluorescent orange, you're just gonna put a smaller highlight over it with that Uriel Yellow. Now if you overdo it with some of that Uriel Yellow, I would go back to that orange and just dry brush over it. Commissar Yarrick! We have come to save... Wait. You're not Commissar Yarrick? By the Emperor. That's the wrong Commissar. That's Caiaphas Cain, the hero of the Imperium. But where is Commissar Yarrick? Remember, it's heresy not to like and subscribe to this video. And if you want even more content, check out my gaming channel at Nuka Gaming. Bye!